sensory experience can heal the brain from Alzheimer's. But wait a sec. Is this scientific fact, or is it just woo-woo? To answer this, today I will walk you through the scientific literature and highlight 5 incredible ways that sensory experience not only induces certain brain waves, but in doing so, it can help the brain in healing itself. Hi there, I'm Yvette, a neuroscientist and an author of several neuroscience studies. On this channel, I dive into all things brain-related to help us understand it better, and who knows, maybe also apply that knowledge to our lives. If this sounds like something up your alley, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button. Before we dive into the science, let's understand what brainwaves are. Your brain is made up of billions of neurons, tiny cells that communicate with each other. When a neuron is activated, it sends an electrical signal called an action potential. But neurons don't work solo, they're part of a network. When one neuron fires, it can cause others in the same network to fire too. This creates a kind of synchronized activity. And that's where brainwaves come in. Think of it like a stadium wave at a sports game. The crowd moves in a rhythm, creating a wave-like effect. In the brain, these waves vary in speed. They can be fast and others can be slow. And neuroscientists measure the speed in frequency, or also called hertz. There are 5 main types of brainwaves, each linked to a different brain state. And the most important one for today are gamma waves. They are fast brainwaves that show up when we are super focused and also while meditating. What's fascinating is that changes in these waves are linked to certain diseases. For example, disruptions in gamma waves are seen in epilepsy and in other conditions such as Alzheimer's disease. And this observation led to one important question, and that is, does restoring gamma waves improve the situation in disease? And long story short, the answer is yes, and this is how. People with Alzheimer's disease typically present with 2 types of misfolded protein inclusions in the brain, made up of tau or amyloid beta. These misfolded proteins start to accumulate and start to build up plaques in the brain, and the presence of these plaques is thought to disrupt brain function in Alzheimer's disease. Back in 2016, a study from the lab of Li Wei-Tsai asked particularly this question, and could show that when the mice modeling the A-beta pathology of Alzheimer's were exposed to a 40 Hz flickering light, they could see a reduction of the accumulated plaques in the visual cortex, that is the brain area responsible for processing visual information. This observation was later replicated in the study by using a 40 Hz sound, and by combining the 2 stimuli, they could see that there were more brain regions affected by this reduction in A-beta plaque pathology other than the auditory and the visual cortex. In a recent study, they could show that if the mice are exposed to 40 Hz vibrations, brain areas associated with touch and movement had a reduction in A-beta pathology. Cool, huh? Exposure to 40 Hz stimuli restores gamma function. This might sound totally off and weird. I for sure couldn't wrap my head around it the first time that I had read it. So let me explain. So as we've mentioned, gamma waves weaken with certain brain disorders such as Alzheimer's. And all of these interventions manage to restore gamma waves artificially. And this is because when we are exposed to a stimulus, the dedicated neurons in the brain start to fire. Thus, exposure to a 40 Hz stimulus will create a dedicated neural network to fire at the same frequency, mimicking gamma wave production. And this is no new knowledge. For example, it has been long known that parts of the brain mimic music tempo, and in turn these affect breathing and heart rate. Exposure to 40 Hz improves behavior. Okay, so now we know that when gamma waves increase, the brain pathology decreases. However, a decrease in pathology not always correlates with improvement in behavior. And to answer this, neuroscientists usually do behavioral studies. That is, they test animals. And in this case, since they were studying Alzheimer's disease, they tested for memory, cognition, sociability, and also motoric function. Basically, there is a test for almost everything. And such tests usually help in understanding whether if a particular treatment would not only improve pathology, but also behavior. And these 40 Hz stimuli experiments pass these tests with flying colors. So here are some of these papers. For example, this study here shows that the 40 Hz sound can protect against neurodegeneration. And for example, this one shows that 40 Hz vibrations improve motoric function. And this one shows that by combining sound and visual stimuli, this leads to an improvement in cognition. 40 Hz activates glia to clear plaques. So the next two parts are for the science nerds like me, as I will go into the mechanism of how this pathology improves. If you're not interested in this, I would suggest to skip ahead to the chapter about what the future holds, where I talk about this method being in clinical trials and the results so far. So, okay nerds, here we go. So how does increased activity in neurons result in a reduced pathology, since as such neurons on their own cannot clear up anything? And this is where the cleanup crew of the brain comes in. And they are called microglia. These tiny but powerful cells act like scavengers, whereby they gobble up blocks. And well, it seems that these 40 Hz oscillations activate them and make them more prone to eat up these harmful blocks. So, in these two studies, they show that 40 Hz stimulus activates microglia. In this paper, they go one step further, because they show that microglia engulf A-beta plaques, suggesting that the reduction of A-beta plaques is due to the increased activity of microglia. 40 Hz stimulus engages the glymphatic system. But any neuroscientist will tell you that microglia eating stuff, and a lot of stuff, is bad actually. Too much, and microglia will eat up also bystanders, such as synapses, and reduction in synapses has been associated with a decline in cognition. And also, too much eating of microglia without getting rid of it will cause an even worse pathology. They are practically like us, on the sofa with a tub of ice cream. So, microglia won't stop until they hit the bottom, or until their stomach is so full that they just die. And so, in all of this comes the role of the vasculature and also astrocytes, which together they make up parts of the glymphatic system, which is the only way how the brain can get rid of unwanted metabolites. Under special conditions, the vasculature and astrocytes can work in synchrony so that they activate the removal of metabolites via the glymphatic system. And now the group of Li Wei Tsai published a paper showing that the 40 Hz stimulus improves glymphatic clearance by activating the vasculature and astrocytes. And this fact is the mechanism how the 40 Hz stimulus can improve brain function in Alzheimer's disease. So what does the future hold? So quick remark, I have no sponsorship or affiliation with the company that I'm gonna mention and with any of the studies that I have mentioned today. I'm just a nerdy scientist showing you what I find cool actually. So what I have shown you so far is all well and good, but you might have noticed that all of these studies that I have shown you have used animal models. However, the question lies, and what about humans? And it seems that the neuroscientists that were involved in the studies that I have mentioned before have started a company to answer exactly this question. The company is called Cognito, with the aim to improve the lives of Alzheimer's patients. In fact, they already have 2 clinical trials on the way. So from phase 1 trial results, we now know that exposure to 40 Hz light and sound is well tolerated by humans. And from their initial phase 2A data, they could show that patients presenting with mild symptoms exhibited an improvement in face name association. Exciting times. I really look forward to the progression of these trials. If you enjoyed today, you might also like this video over here, where I go over 5 ways how music can affect the brain and how we can use it to our advantage. And with this, thanks for watching and see you next time. Ciao!